You can have a brilliant trial idea, the kind of idea that could genuinely change practice. But if a grant proposal doesn't explain it clearly, defend it convincingly, and show that the team can actually deliver it, it may go unfunded.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about today. We're approaching today's conversation from the perspective of two reviewers who've sat on RCT peer review committees to discuss the patterns that explain why some good grant ideas often don't get funded.
So first, why is strong science not always enough?
Because in peer review, the committee doesn't fund the idea in your head. It scores the proposal on the page. And if that page leaves reviewers guessing, the grant is already in trouble.
By the end of this episode, we hope to answer 3 questions. What makes reviewers lose trust? What makes them lean in? And what can trialists do before submission to give their grant a better chance?
Let's start with something blunt. Committees don't fund potential. They fund confidence.
100%. Because we often see grant proposals where you can tell the team is strong, the science is interesting, and the clinical problem is real, but the grant application keeps asking reviewers to fill in the blanks. If the proposal doesn't explain something, the reviewer doesn't usually assume the best possible version. They assume uncertainty, and uncertainty becomes risk.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. We might often hear comments like, I think they mean this, or I assume they'll do that, or maybe the site's already agreed. That kind of language can be deadly during the review process.
Stronger grants make it easy for reviewers. They have a clear question, a clear reason the trial matters, a clear design, and enough detail to believe the team has thought through the hard parts.
And weaker ones often have what I'd call expert blindness. The team knows what they mean, but they don't translate it for reviewers. The applicants are so close to the topic that they forget the reviewer may not live in that content area.
Another thing that usually stands out is scope. Some teams try to do too much.
Yeah, I agree. Too much of everything. Too many aims, too many outcomes, too many secondary questions, too many promises.
The classic, while we're doing the trial, we may as well also.
Yes, and doing too much can backfire. Trials are usually expensive, slow, and operationally demanding. So the proposal has to make the main decision very clear, and the question has to be worth randomizing people, sites, or systems for.
It's not enough to say, this is interesting. The application has to say, this is the decision that remains uncertain, and this trial is the best way to reduce or resolve this uncertainty.
Applicants also sometimes don't convince the committee that real uncertainty remains.
Yes, especially when there is existing evidence from observational studies or smaller trials.
In those cases, reviewers ask, is this really a trial problem, or is this an uptake problem? If the evidence already points in one direction, then a new RCT may not be the answer. Maybe the field needs implementation work, training, policy change, or better access.
Trialists have to be honest about that. If you're asking for a large RCT, you need to show why the answer still isn't settled. Let's talk about impact.
Some applications use big language like urgent, transformative, or practice-changing. But then the proposal doesn't show the burden, how many people are affected, which decision would change, or who is waiting for the answer.
Exactly. Tell us the size of the problem. Tell us the current practice gap. Tell us why existing evidence is not enough. Tell us what patients, clinicians, or health systems will do differently if the trial answers the question. And just as important, tell us what happens if the trial does not show the expected benefit. Will it stop waste, prevent unnecessary scale-up, or clarify that current practice should continue?
That's a much stronger argument than only saying, if positive, this will change practice. Reviewers want to know whether the knowledge will be useful either way.
Another major piece is outcome selection.
Yes, a trial can recover from a few minor weaknesses, but a weak primary outcome is hard to overcome. The primary outcome is the promise of the trial.
Exactly. If the primary outcome isn't meaningful, valid, measurable, and timed properly, reviewers start questioning the whole investment. Sometimes applications try to protect themselves by adding outcome after outcome, but measuring everything doesn't make a trial stronger. It can make reviewers wonder whether the team knows which result actually matters.
The strongest applications make the primary outcome feel inevitable. You read the background, the clinical problem, the patient priorities, and the design, and by the time you reach the outcome, you think, of course, that's the right outcome.
That's a great test. Timing matters too. If the outcome is measured too early, reviewers ask whether the intervention has enough time to work. If it's measured too late, they ask whether the effect may be diluted or lost. And if the outcome comes from routine data, reviewers ask whether those data are complete, accurate, linked properly, and available when needed. So the proposal needs to justify the outcome definition, the measurement window, the data source, expected missingness, linkage process, data lag, and what happens when participants move or receive care outside the system.
Beyond outcomes, let me ask you this. How important is the trial design in shaping whether reviewers trust the proposal?
It's central. A good design tells reviewers that the team understands the decision they're trying to inform. A weak or mismatched design makes reviewers wonder whether the trial can actually answer its own question.
A common reason proposals lose reviewer confidence is when the design doesn't quite match the question. Not wildly wrong, but misaligned enough to create doubt. Like when the intervention is delivered at the clinic level, but the proposal talks as if patients are fully independent. Another is when usual care is the comparator, but usual care is never described or described poorly.
That one always gets me. Usual care is not a magic phrase. Usual care can vary by site, clinician, region, time, and resource level. If the comparator is vague, the treatment effect becomes hard to interpret.
And in pragmatic trials, that matters even more. You can allow real-world variation, but you still have to define what variation is expected, what will be measured, and what would threaten the trial.
Another issue is when teams choose a design because it sounds sophisticated. Cluster randomization, stepped wedge, adaptive features, embedded trial, registry-based follow-up. These can all be excellent, but the proposal has to explain why that design is needed.
Right, a complex design isn't automatically stronger. Sometimes it just creates more places where the proposal needs explanation. The best design is the clearest, meaning the grant proposal shows the problem, justifies the choice, and names the risks.
Let's talk stats.
This is one section where confidence can either rise quickly or fall off a cliff. A common issue is when the statistical plan is too thin for the proposed trial, or, just as bad, is when the analysis plan doesn't align with the intent, question, design, or outcome.
Sample size is often a big one. Can you go into that?
Yes, of course. So the sample size section is where the team shows that the trial is capable of answering the question it set out to answer. It should convince reviewers that the proposed number of participants, sites, or clusters is tied directly to the primary outcome, the design, and the expected analysis. Reviewers need to see the assumptions: event rates, effect size, loss to follow-up, crossover, clustering if relevant, power, alpha, issues around multiple testing, sources for those assumptions, and sensitivity analyses around those assumptions.
Do you think statistical reviewers should be able to replicate the sample size calculations?
In most cases, yes. A statistical reviewer should be able to follow the logic, see the assumptions, and broadly reproduce how the team arrived at the proposed sample size. If they can't, that's a problem, because the entire trial rests on whether the proposed sample can answer the question. That said, some trials are too complex for a simple formula. Some designs and complex outcome structures may require simulation-based sample size calculations. That's fine, but the proposal then needs to explain the simulation clearly. What was simulated, which assumptions were used, how many scenarios were tested, and what results led to the final sample size.
I think another common issue is when the sample size calculation seems disconnected from the trial itself.
Yes, that's another area where confidence drops fast. For example, the primary outcome is time to event, but the sample size is presented as if it were a simple binary outcome. Or the intervention is delivered by clinic, but the calculation treats every patient as independent.
Or the proposal says the primary outcome is patient important, but the calculation is really powered around a secondary or a different, easier to measure outcome.
Exactly. Reviewers notice that, and once they notice it, they start asking whether the team fully understands what trial they're proposing.
So it's not just about the number being large enough.
No, it's about whether the calculation matches the design, the unit of randomization, the primary outcome, the expected analysis, and the real-world conditions of the trial. And this is where the estimand matters.
Say more about that.
The estimand is the treatment effect the trial is actually trying to estimate. For example, are we estimating the effect of being assigned to the intervention, even if some people don't fully follow it? Are we estimating the effect of actually receiving the intervention? Or are we estimating the effect of a clinic-level policy? Those are different questions, and they can lead to different assumptions, analyses, and sometimes different sample size requirements. If the proposal doesn't make the estimand clear, the sample size calculation can feel disconnected from the trial's real purpose.
And that same alignment issue shows up in other places too. Missing data is one of them.
Yes, we don't expect missing data is not a plan. People move, sites change workflows, data feeds fail, outcomes get recorded differently, patients miss visits, clinicians don't complete forms. If the trial depends on perfect data capture, reviewers will not believe it. Reviewers want to know how much missing data is expected, why that estimate is reasonable, how missingness will be monitored, and what the team will do if the pattern of missing data differs across groups or sites.
And how about subgroup analyses?
This is another place where the proposal has to stay honest. Subgroups are often useful, but they need humility. If the trial isn't powered to detect differences across subgroups, don't write as if those analyses will deliver firm answers. Say they're exploratory. Explain why they matter. Pre-specify them, but don't pretend they carry the same weight as the primary analysis.
I agree. The larger issue is credibility. The statistics section should tell reviewers, we know what effect we're estimating, we know what could go wrong, and we've planned for the trial we're actually running, not the perfect version of it. Trial feasibility is another factor that heavily influences reviewer scores.
Completely agree, and applicants can do a lot to strengthen this part of the grant. Reviewers expect applicants to demonstrate they understand what it will take to run the trial in the real world. For example, if the trial needs recruitment, show site volumes, past recruitment rates, pilot data, or screening logs. If retention matters, show what has worked before and what you'll do when participants miss visits. If the intervention has to be delivered across sites, show training plans, workflow testing, and evidence that sites can actually do it.
Another thing is, don't just say the partners or sites are supportive. Make the support concrete. In your letters of support, explicitly say what each partner or site is committing to: patient volume, staff time, access to data, leadership support, clinic space, or whatever is essential.
Timeline is another place where applicants can really help themselves. The application needs to present a realistic plan to reviewers. That is, a timeline that guides reviewers through ethics approval, contracts, site activation, staff training, recruitment, intervention delivery, follow-up, data extraction, data cleaning, analysis, and all the way to reporting and knowledge translation.
So when it comes to trial feasibility, the constructive message is this: don't ask reviewers to simply believe the trial is feasible. Show them. Give them the data, commitments, timeline, and contingency plans that make the trial feel doable. Related to feasibility is the team leading the trial.
Exactly. Strong applications show that the team is built around the work, not just assembled around the topic. If the trial needs complex randomization or analysis, the statistician should be clearly involved from the start. If the trial depends on sites, workflows, or data systems, the application should show site leadership, operations expertise, and data expertise. If the proposal includes specialized content, patient-reported outcomes, or economic work, the team should include people who actually know those areas. Reviewers should also be able to see who is responsible for recruitment, intervention delivery, data quality, analysis, site coordination, patient engagement, and knowledge translation. Vague roles create risk because they make the trial feel unmanaged.
Do you think it matters if the team has worked together before?
New teams can absolutely succeed, but multi-site trials require trust, communication, and fast decisions under pressure. If the team hasn't worked together before, the grant should explain how they'll coordinate, how decisions will be made, and who is steering the ship.
Let's talk about patient engagement, equity, and knowledge translation. These sections can be very important, but they need to feel connected to the actual trial.
I agree. Reviewers are not looking for perfect plans. They're looking for evidence that the team has thought carefully about who the trial affects, who needs to be involved, and how the findings could eventually be used.
Patient partners are a good example. Their involvement can strengthen a proposal when the application explains how they helped shape the question, outcomes, recruitment approach, participant burden, interpretation, or sharing of results.
Exactly. It helps when the grant is specific. What role will patient partners have? When will they be involved? How will their input influence decisions? How will they be supported and compensated? Those details make the engagement feel practical and meaningful.
The same applies to sex and gender and broader equity considerations. A general statement is usually not enough. Reviewers want to see how those considerations connect to the trial design.
For example, will recruitment differ by sex or gender? Does the outcome tool work similarly across groups? Are language, disability, rural access, transportation, digital access, or caregiving responsibilities relevant? If yes, the grant should explain how the team will address them.
And knowledge translation needs that same level of specificity. If the trial produces a useful result, who needs to hear it? Patients, clinicians, health system leaders, policymakers, sites, professional groups?
Right. A strong KT plan shows a pathway from trial result to use. It explains who the decision makers are, what they will need from the trial, and how the team will share results in ways that support real decisions.
So, what separates the strongest grants from the ones that go down? For some reviewers, it comes down to confidence. Strong grants reduce uncertainty. They don't pretend the trial is simple, and they don't hide the hard parts. They are clear about the question, quantify the problem, show why the evidence gap still matters, and choose a design that fits the decision the trial is meant to inform.
Yeah, exactly. For me, the strongest grants also make the rest of the proposal feel aligned. They prioritize a meaningful outcome, make the statistical plan checkable, demonstrate feasibility rather than hope for it, and show that the team can actually deliver the work. They also make partner engagement and knowledge translation feel real, not decorative. By the end, reviewers aren't left guessing.
Honestly, write the grant for the thoughtful but tired reviewer reading it at 1 a.m., who may not be a content expert and still has a stack of applications waiting.
That's a good message to close at.
Thanks for your attention. If this was helpful, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment on which review issues you think matter most, or what important points we may have missed.